Welcome, everybody, to the Hot Tag Hooligans Wrestling Podcast Show with myself, Aaron. And this episode, Tom unfortunately could not be with us due to shoot job obligations, but I do have a fantastic guest lined up for this episode. Hey, she's somebody I would not want to suplex me. It is the one and only Tinaily. How's it going?
Going good. How are you?
Doing well. How was your weekend?
It was pretty good. I wrestled at IWA, Florida. It's a good time. Didn't get the win, but it happens. It was a good match. I wrestled against Persia Pierce, actually.
Now, let me ask, Persia is a former guest of ours here on the show. And so that kind of makes me ask this question. I know Chris Jericho is someone who does this. Do you keep a documentation of every match that you
I do. I do.
So one day when you're sitting back and you're looking at this book of all your accomplishments, what is one thing that you hope is on that list?
Well, that's a good question. A hope for me has always been just to actually, get to the WWE. That's the one company. Because, as a kid, you watch, and the one you watched was WWE, of course. So get on WWE and get a championship match.
Is there anybody that you would be hoping to have that title at the time that you get that championship match?
I wouldn't say anyone in specific. The one person that I could think of actually isn't there right now because my favorite currently is Sasha Banks.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing with Sasha. There is a new regime sort of taking over here in the WWE. Perhaps, and some fingers crossed on this, perhaps some of those issues between her and Naomi and the WWE can kind of get worked out with this new leadership, perhaps taking over. I do feel like, personally, Triple H has always done a really good job at elevating talent in NXT when he's been given, the ability to. So if he is in full control, there's this little bit of hope in me that we're about to see some great talent either come back to the WWE or be elevated.
Yeah, I definitely have that hope as well.
Now, when I look at your career, and something that really stood out to me, I am from a small community and a small county here in Kentucky. But the one thing that we do well here is wrestle. In our state, our high school here has won the state wrestling championship, I think maybe 10 times in a row, and probably I couldn't tell you, about 42 singles champions during this during this frame. And you, my dear, are someone who are no strangers to the mat as well. And it's very rare. I mean, let's be honest. There's not a lot of females who go out and actually do high school wrestling. So what interests you in that?
So it's actually a funny story. So when I was in middle school, I went to the school that was like a K through 8 school. So kindergarten all the way to 8th grade. And I was a teaching assistant for a 2nd grade teacher who also happened to be the middle school wrestling coach. I watched WWE. So one day we're just talking about wrestling and everything about it. And one day he brought up, he was like, hey, I am the wrestling coach. Maybe you should try out. And I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe. And then he looked at me, he was like, you know what? Well, you're actually too small. You probably wouldn't even be good. Just to kind of give me that push, when somebody tells you that you can't do something, what are you going to do? You want to do it, right? So I went to the tryout and I got there and I was like, this isn't like WWE wrestling. And I went at it still and I fell in love. So that's kind of what started me there.
Yeah, I think whenever my son was in that age, he had been very big on WWE, him and my nephews. And so I took him to little wrestling camp to get him a little try. And I was thinking, I apologize right now to everyone if they're trying to do suplexes, they're trying to hit people with chairs. And it wasn't for him. He was just kind of like, this isn't for me. I don't like that. But it's such a dedicated, driven sport. Probably more so than any other sport because there's weight cutting involved sometimes.
A lot. Yeah.
The training and the cardio that goes into this is just, if you're wanting to be successful, is outrageous. So what was something that you found really challenging in your early wrestling career as far as mat wrestling?
Starting out, it wasn't too bad. I would say once I got to high school and weight cutting got involved, that's when it got really serious because everyone's cutting weight. So if you stay at the weight you are, realistically, you're going to be the smallest one in that weight class. So you want to get down. I actually wrestled the lowest weight class there was. So it was a lot. And then I was captain of the girls team at my high school, but I was also on the guys varsity team. So wrestling with the guys was always a big challenge because people always ask like, oh, did they go easy on you? But no, I always felt like they went so much harder because they don't want to fall lower in the rankings than you, and they don't want to get beat by a girl.
So did you have a lot of backlash whenever you were wrestling other schools? Were people in the crowd talking trash about that? Because I've heard some stories from other people that we've had on the show who were also female wrestlers and talked about the backlash that they were getting. Is that something that you were facing as well?
I was a little luckier on that side just because I had a great coach. So if anything were to ever happen, he took care of it for me. And I didn't really have to deal with that too much. I definitely had guys like look at me and say that they didn't want to wrestle me plenty of times, a lot of forfeits, especially when I started out. But once guys figured out that I was actually pretty good in a challenge, they were more into wrestling me.
And look at all those medals behind you. I mean,
These aren't even all of them.
yes, and that's a crazy amount. I mean, it looks like every bit of 15 to 16 right there, and you are a two-time state champion.
Mm-hmm.
So accomplishing something like that on any level, being a state champion for any type of sport is great. But when it comes to wrestling, it's really individual. I mean, it really is the kudos to all the hard work that you've really put in. So when you accomplished that, how did you feel?
Oh man, it felt like I was in a movie. It was my first time winning anything like that big, and when I got there, it was actually so my school as a team won the year before. So states was held at my high school that first year that I won. So when I won, I got on the podium and all you hear is like tiny, tiny, because I was still called tiny at that time. And it was just literally, I have a video of it where I'm just like crying because it's like so much happiness.
And you mentioned the name Tiny. Well, it says that you're 4'10", okay? So that may be one of the shortest people that I've known in the wrestling business right now. Has that worked to your advantage or disadvantage when it comes to getting booked for shows or being taken seriously?
I would say yes and no. So people don't really realize I'm as short as I am until they see me in person. So a lot of times I'll get booked on a show and then I get there and they're like, whoa, like you're a lot shorter than I thought. Like I knew your name was Tiny, but I didn't see that. So, I mean, I would say it also kind of makes me stand out a little in a way because I really don't know anybody shorter than myself right now. But it could also be a challenge just because, it is a barrier you have to face. So I definitely like when I go against somebody bigger than me, I have to know how to wrestle them in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, and the very first time I saw Rey Mysterio Jr. on television, I thought, and I was myself at the time in high school, and I was kind of thinking, who is this kid out here? You get what I'm saying? Because he was really skinny, he was super short, and years later, I was able to meet Rey at WrestleMania 19. And I'm telling you, I felt like I was towering over him. There's a picture of me and Rey Mysterio, and there's about this much height difference. But let's be honest, he could kick my ass with no trouble if he wanted to. And I think that's something about you. When I watch your style, yes, you're shorter than maybe a Jordan Blade, but you're believable in what you do. And sometimes that goes with the move sets that you're given. So when you're out there and you're trying to perfect your craft, are there certain move sets that you try to implement into your style?
Oh, definitely. So when I look at anything in pro wrestling, I put my amateur wrestling into it. So because that's what I know best. That's what I've done. I've done amateur wrestling for about 10 years. So I always I'll look back at wrestling matches. I still watch amateur wrestling when I can. And I'll see something like, oh, like I can switch that up to make it work for pro wrestling. So I do that a lot. And even with my suplexes, they're pure amateur wrestling suplexes.
And you are known as the Suplex Queen.
Yes.
And so that kind of goes back to that pedigree of being a wrestler, the Kurt Angles, the Brock Lesnar's. Are they two wrestlers that you kind of look up to as far as
definitely them? Taz as well is a big one.
Oh yeah, and people forget about Taz so much because his WWE run was not that successful. He was injured, but the ECW Taz, the Suplex
Mhm.
Queen. I mean, oh my goodness, and he wasn't that tall compared to a lot of the WWE guys.
Yeah.
So that's really good that you mentioned Taz because a lot of the newer generation does not pay attention to Taz. So it shows me now that you are a student of the game.
Oh,
Is there any,
definitely. I do all my research.
so Taz is somebody whose promo skills were phenomenal.
Oh,
Do you feel
amazing.
like that your promo skills are pretty strong?
I feel like they're pretty good. I definitely still work on it. Starting out, it was something that was definitely more of a challenge for me because I picked up the wrestling pretty easy. It was the main two things that were a little challenging for me were, getting into the promos and then also, the crowd work, of course, because when you're in an amateur wrestling match, you don't want to listen to the crowd at all. So those were the two things. I've definitely came a long way for sure, though.
One of our favorite promotions here is Combat Fights Unlimited.
Mm.
Um, we've done a lot of sponsorship for them because I just think it's so different than what else is out there right now. I love the aspect of having these badass women, and they have men involved sometimes too. But I love the badass women aspect of this grappler versus this striker and the type
Mm-hmm.
of matches that they have. Sometimes the matches aren't that long at all. And I
Yeah.
love it because it brings that believability factor to it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to be involved in their upcoming show.
Yeah.
Tell me what drew you to that promotion.
So they contacted me after Mission Pro. I had a match at Mission Pro against Jordan Blade, and they like called it a shooter versus shooter match, which it was. We both have a background in it. She has her jujitsu, me with my amateur wrestling. I also did jujitsu for a while too. But so I guess once they saw the shooter versus shooter, they sent me a message and I looked into it. I watched a few matches and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. Literally just looking at the matches and seeing, the caliber of women that are on it, the backgrounds that they have, and just the way the matches are set up. I was like, this is definitely something that I've been looking forward to do because I mean, as a pro wrestler, I love doing the pro wrestling, but sometimes you miss that like aspect of the amateur wrestling and the ground wrestling. And CFU is definitely a promotion that includes that in it.
Yeah, and CFU, for everyone who is not aware, Masha Slamovich, Jordan Blade, Ray Lynn, I mean, Persia Pierce, like you mentioned
Yeah.
previously, a lot of tough, badass women in that promotion. And very easily, if you have not seen any of their action, to find their action, they are on IWTV. So check
Mm-hmm.
some of their matches up. Is there anyone that you're looking forward to on that roster right now, though, for CFU that you want that one-on-one match with?
There's one girl that I have never met her yet. But I've seen some of her stuff and I really like her work. Killa Kate. I've literally never even spoken to her before, but I've watched her stuff, and I'm like, we could definitely have a great match in there. Her and of course Masha Slamovich because it's Masha Slamovich.
Oh yeah, Masha is just phenomenal, and she's someone over the last couple of years has really her stock is really starting to rise a lot. But I think that's with a lot of women. I really believe that with Mission Pro Wrestling,
Mm-hmm.
there's a Flawless Wrestling in Tennessee that does it as well. NWA had their all women's promotion show that brought in women from all over. I love seeing these all women shows. It's one of my favorite type of events to go to. I've been able to go to Girl Fight here locally, sort of where I am. I loved it. So Mission Pro, though, I would say almost right now is that top tier for the all women, and it's run by Thunder Rosa. So tell me about your interactions with her.
I actually didn't get to meet Thunder Rosa when I
Oh,
went.
really?
I was so sad because she's one of my favorites. She's definitely up there. I believe she was fighting Britt Baker. Like she had her match against Britt Baker the next day, so she was up over there, and she won the championship the next day or whatever. So I didn't get to meet her sadly, but I messaged her when I got back home. Thanked her for everything, and she's just so kind, very humble. So I did have a good little conversation.
Yeah, Thunder Rosa, again, also a former guest here on the show. I just love some of the talent over. Maddie Rankowski is one of our favorites as well.
is a great one too.
Yes, Holiday. It's just, are you looking to go back there anytime soon? Has there been any talk about that?
I haven't talked to them yet, but I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I would definitely love to come back.
All right, Thunder Rosa, if you're watching this episode, let's bring her back. Even if it's just you and her one-on-one and you smack her across the face, she'll take it because she wants it.
I love getting hit, you know?
There you go. Absolutely. All right, enough wrestling aside, because one thing I love to do is to get deep into our talent that we have on the show. I want to know more about you as far as wrestling's not concerned. So you're sitting at home. It's a Friday night. You got the television on. What are you watching?
Criminal Minds. I love documentaries, things like that. And I also really like horror movies. Those are like my two.
Now, I'm really weird on my horror movies. I like the slasher types more than I like the paranormal types. But I do love Jordan Peele a lot, and I've gotten to where I really enjoy a lot of his stuff. Nope, of course, came out this week. I really need to go see it as well. But if you had to say what is your favorite horror slasher sci-fi type movie, what would it be?
That's a good one. There's so many. I would say up there is definitely It. I liked It a lot. And then we're going to just stick with It. It is definitely up there for me. But there is a lot of really good horror movies.
I have still not seen the second part
of
the new It. I know, it's crazy because I watched the first one like immediately when it came out, and I still haven't had the chance to sit down and watch the second part yet. And it's kind of crazy because my 10-year-old is like super into this type of stuff now. So I'm kind of trying to dive back and not watch as much of that go. So do you ever get to go out and do anything? What's your go-to Friday night out on the town type date?
I don't go out a lot. But I mean, I'd love to go to a bar here and there. I'm not like a club type person, but bars are where it's at.
All right. We're riding in the car and you look at me and you say, "This is my jam." What's the song that's on?
Oof.
And don't worry, we won't judge you here. Because
currently, it's like an R&B song. Kaylani, I don't know if you know who that is. Yeah. She has a song called Cupid's Curse, and it's amazing. It's just beautiful. I think it's featured by like Four or somebody like that, but it's a great song if you ever have time to hear it.
Are you somebody who likes every type of genre of music, or do you just have your...
Like yes and no. Like there's things that I like and don't like about a lot of genres, but I feel like in every single genre I could find at least one song that I like.
Yeah, people think I'm crazy because I live in Kentucky, and country music is probably my least favorite. It's just...
So there are some good country songs.
There are some good country songs. If the song's good, I like it. Exactly. I grew up with, traveling down the highway. My parents would say, now on the way to the mall, you kids can have the radio, but on the way home, me and your dad get the radio. That's so fair. We make a deal. So I grew up on a lot of old Motown. I love a lot of old 80s rock. But now that my kids, oh my goodness, some of these songs that I hear, it just blows my mind how some people really like some of the songs. So what's a good one? Like Plan B by Megan Thee Stallion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I came on the other day and I was just thinking, my mom and dad would have killed me.
Oh my God. My mom would still kill me.
Yes. And it's just like, so I'm trying to figure out what's the balance. How do I, sorry, honey, we got to turn channel here, even though I told the kids that they can listen to anything. So yeah. It's tough. It's tough being a dad. I'm just telling you now, the stuff that I would have got away with, I do not let them get away with at all.
Yeah, no, I can't even think of having kids right now. I'm waiting until I'm past my 30s.
Okay, so that brings up an interesting thing. You said past your 30s. So are you somebody, we see women like Becky Lynch be able to have a child and come back and still be at the top of their game. Is there a part of a fear for a female? Because let's be honest, most males wouldn't care. If their wife got pregnant, they're still coming to work next week in the WWE. So is there some kind of fear that for women that you got this certain timeline in a certain time frame in your career, because Randy Orton's still doing it at almost 50 years of age. But let's be honest, WWE is not going to let a 50-year-old woman perhaps be world champion.
Yeah.
It's probably never going to happen. So what goes through your mind when you're planning your career versus the rest of your life?
It's a good question. I would say the way I look at it, it's like by the time I do have kids, I want to at least be like at a good space and where I'm known enough that if I do come back, I will still be up there. So it really would depend on the timeline of my career that I could start doing these other things that I would want to do in life, like, you know, have kids and even get married and stuff. Because I'm very like, when I have kids, I want to know that I can like care for them the way I want to, be there for them, but also still do what I want to do, you know? It's like, it's very, and it would also depend on like who I get married to, you know?
Until you really make it to the big time, you're basically getting paid at a show, and then you're having to turn right around and use that money for travel, food, and perhaps training to be better at the job that you're going to. So when you look at your career in 5 years, what is something that you are hoping to happen to eliminate a lot of that?
Well, I mean, like in 5 years, I would like to be signed to a bigger promotion by then, hopefully, just to make me feel like I'm at least on the right track, whether it's like Impact, WWE, AEW, even if it's just in developmental, just to give me that like check in my head, like, okay, you know what, I'm on the right track and I can really do this as a living.
Now, wrestling is one of those hard sports where we've had a lot of people on the show and their families were talking them out of it. They were wanting them to do other things in their life. Mm-hmm. Did you find a lot of support from your friends and family for this?
Yes and no. So when I actually started amateur wrestling, my mom did not want me to do it at all. I went to her one day and I was like, hey, can I wrestle? Like wrestling tryouts are coming up. Can I do it? And she was like, no, literally just no, you're going to get hurt. You're tiny. I'm not doing this. You're fragile. And I was like, no, I'm not. So I went to the tryouts anyways. I made the team. And for my first wrestling match, I had her come and I told her it was a volleyball game. Yeah. She showed up and she looked around and she was like, what is this? And I was like, Mom, please, you're here. Just watch. If I win, you have to let me do it. So I did it. I won all my matches that night. And she was like, literally throughout my whole match, she's like eyes closed, like you can hear her in the video, like screaming and stuff. It's hilarious. But after that, she was a little bit more like, okay, you know what? She went through all of this to get me to let her do it. So whatever, you could do it. And then after that, I was like, well, as long as you don't get hurt, you could do it. And that was a whole nother roller coaster. But yeah, I mean, after I did that, she shows up to everything. Any show that I have close by, she'll come. When I was at all my high school tournaments, she came. When I went to nationals in North Dakota, she showed up and everything. So after that, she's been very supportive. She still to this day will be like, you're so weird. Why do you want to be a wrestler still? But she's supportive with it. It's just like she never expected it, I would say.
So you were able to go to Fargo.
Yeah.
This week, the two kids from my high school that are going to be, I think they're going to be freshmen, the first two kids from Kentucky to ever win Fargo national championships. That's why I know that. If I told you, if I didn't live in a wrestling community, I probably would have never known that. So what was that experience like? Because that's the cream of the crop. That's it.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. My first year that I went, I was still like just in awe of everything, all the women there, just because, you know, wrestling throughout like high school and stuff, you see women like each year it grew so much. But like my first year, I want to say there was only like 12 girls in my bracket for states. And I got fourth my first year. But then like it kept going. And by the time I got to my senior year, there was over 50 girls in my bracket. So it was crazy, you know, just to see the growth, but also to get to Fargo and just see all those women, like Team California is like Stag, Team Texas, all of them. It was amazing. So when I got there that year, I didn't do that great my first time, But I came back the next year and I actually fractured my collarbone like a week or two before. And I was like, well, I already paid for it. I'm going to go. So I went off so many painkillers and I actually went 4-2. So I didn't place, but 4-2, not bad, winning record. So if you lose, basically, if you lose 2 matches, you're out. But there were so many girls. I actually had the bracket with the most girls out of like every single weight class. But it was still a great experience. I also did the Fargo National Duo, and it was cool to get to meet girls that wrestled out there too. It was a great experience. I made a lot of new friends there for sure.
Awesome. What would you say to a young 6-7-year-old who's thinking, who's a female, who's thinking about going into wrestling?
Do it. It'll change your life. You know, it's something that just gives more than just the physicality of it. Wrestling, like as a kid, I went through a lot. So when I got into wrestling and I started it, I just felt like as a person, I grew so much through the challenges, the weight cuts, mentally just having to literally work out every single part of your body. And at points, like my wrestling coach in high school would have us wrestle blindfolded sometimes so that we can literally feel everything that we're doing. And it's little things like that you don't think it's helping you mentally, but it's helping you so much. So go for it all the way.
Awesome. Well, before I let you go, tell everyone where they can find you on social media.
It'll be at Tanaily Suplex, so at Tanaily Suplex on all social medias.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on here with us tonight. I really appreciate it. Sorry, Tom, again, could not be here. I know he really wanted to. And again, everyone, make sure to be watching because who knows? She could be the next Combat Fights Unlimited champion. She could be. It could possibly be coming up very soon. And maybe she's going to get that dream match with Masha Slamovich or Sasha Banks very soon as well. Who knows? But Tiny, I greatly appreciate you hopping on here with me tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. For everyone else out there, make sure you're doing what you need to do. Stay healthy. It's crazy that we're starting to have this COVID start picking back up all across. But listen, we got to be safe so we can support all the great talent in the world of professional wrestling by going to the shows. The last thing I need is for wrestling shows to start being canceled. It's the last thing for all the talent needs as well. So do what you need to do. Head over to PWTs, pick out some of our merchandise. We'd greatly appreciate it. We have some of our lowest prices ever on PWTs. And if you're looking for a good book to read, pick up a copy of my book, Independent Road: A Wrestler's Journey. Follows the life of some great talent like Effie, Billy Starks, Lou Fisto, Facade, Alex Gracia, Molly Spartan, and many more. I greatly appreciate that as well. For myself and Tiny, we appreciate y'all, and we'll see y'all next week.